Well, hello everyone. I'm Juana Attieh. Today I'll be going over our Deep Funding 2 proposal that we got funded, the proposal that we got funded for Deep Funding Round 2, which was about building a community engagement scores proof of concept. So just a quick introduction on who Photrek is. Photrek is a research and development company that's focused on 3 pillars: DAO governance and cryptocurrency. So a lot of research that consists modeling and analysis of different governance mechanisms and voting systems. Machine intelligence for complex systems. So ability to incorporate risk points and developing models for that purpose, as well as environmental risk impacts. So different models for risk impacts and environmental purposes. So the program management that is done in Photrek and how most of the proposals are being handled. Photrek prides itself on using a decentralized approach to program management. It follows sociocracy and sociocratic principles. And these principles are based on this book, or inspired by this book called We the People. And it's based on 3 main pillars: establishment of different governance circles. There's a group consent for decision making, and then there's dual linking of circles through a designated leader and elected delegate. So a quick recap of what this contribution engagement or contribution score tool is. The main goal of this tool is to eventually build a modular open source solution that allows different projects within the SingularityNET ecosystem and possibly beyond to be able to calculate scores. So any community that uses reputation-based mechanisms for their governance processes, they'll need a tool to be able to calculate these scores. They can be utilized for different purposes. In the case of Deep Funding, these scores are integrated into the voting power and the engagement rewards for each community member. So for our proposal, we aim to achieve 3 main things: to build a proof of concept that the Deep Funding community, that the Deep Funding team can utilize right away, build out specifications for what the future of this product will look like, as well conduct score and community engagement, score research and community engagement. So what we've achieved so far for the proof of concept, we've developed a tool that can be utilized by the Deep Funding team, like I mentioned, and this tool successfully imports the SWAE data into the designated database. It automates the contribution score calculation that was previously done by Deep Funding. There was a simple UI that was built for the Deep Funding team to be able to easily configure these scores and calculate them. There was network measure diagrams that were outputted as well, and these helped the Deep Funding team analyze different things about the community and specific like centrality, who has more power and whatnot within the network or the community members of Deep Funding. And as well, there was technical documentation that was written, and everything's open source on GitHub. For the future product specification, there's a lot of user research that was done, meeting with the different teams and Deep Funding to gather requirements. There were user flows that were mapped out in order to understand exactly what those processes and what this tool would look like and how it would be utilized. Beyond that, we also laid out exactly what the requirements for the proof of concept is, which was later developed, and then designed what the next phase of this would be, which is the minimum viable product. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But then as well, we had different discussions around what we envision this future tool to look like and what those specifications will have. So what's next for this product? Like I mentioned, now we have a fully functioning proof of concept that allows the Deep Funding team to calculate scores based on engagement using the SWAE data. But Deep Funding calculates voting power for their community members based on 2 main things. One would be the engagement on the SWAE portal, but also their AGIX holding and their voting rate, or their AGIX holding, the quadratic weight of their voting, quadratic weight of their AGIX holding. So right now for the MVP, we'd want to incorporate this data into the final voting power score. So we want to be able to consume the voting consume all the data that's right now on the Deep Funding voting portal, be able to calculate the square root of their quadratic vote, as well as have an algorithm that will output all of the engagement ratings and incorporate that into the final score. As well as we need to provide Deep Funding with a way to distribute engagement awards. So based on their previous round's engagement score, as well as like different other configurations, Deep Funding team will, with this MVP, be able to output a final voting weight or score for their community members. And beyond that, we will also be conducting different research on how we can incorporate knowledge graphs and different measures to help the Deep Funding team analyze their community and their powers better. And yeah, I kind of sped through that really quickly. But if you guys have any questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, I might have a question. First of all, very interesting approach, and I'm happy that we have something like that here and not like Project Catalyst, where things, yeah, evolve in a different pace, I would say. But I'm curious how you kind of weight that contribution. So or like that engagement, because I can just like drop loads of comments, but they are not really of high quality. So how do you incorporate that?
Well, the Deep Funding team is working towards adding different mechanisms. For the proof of concept right now, it unfortunately boils down to just a numerical value. So like let's say a thumbs up is a 1, a thumbs down is a negative, and it kind of balances out like that. Eventually, hopefully when this tool develops further, we can incorporate things like semantic analysis or AI and, advance it that way. But for now, and this is why knowledge graphs here would be very helpful, or all of these other analytical tools that will be able to help counterbalance those like gaming the system. But right now it's quite simple. It's just like a configurable score. Yeah.
Okay, well, you said it's proof of concept phase, so it makes sense. You have to start somewhere. But yeah, I
just because right now everything was done very manually in spreadsheets, and it was very tedious and prone to error and not very transparent. So this is just the first step into automating those scores, and then beyond that we can advance the software to incorporate AI and all these different network analysis, let's call them.
Is that would that be part of your continuation proposal in Fund 3?
So the MVP will be to incorporate the voting portal data. So now it's just the SWAE data. The voting portal data would be incorporated in the MVP. Hopefully, if there's time and if there's resources, then maybe, but I don't think so. I think it will mostly be research-based at the moment for this next phase.
Yeah, exciting to see the progress, for sure. It's like...
That was something I lost in translation as well, is which parts are there now and which parts will be added. So maybe if there is, well, I'm having a difficulty reading the pages that small, so that could add to it.
No worries. So right now, what the Deep Funding team could do is all of the data that is exported from the SWAE portal. So all of the engagement by the community members that's done on the SWAE portal can be exported and imported into this tool. And that specific engagement score based on the SWAE data can be calculated. The next phase, which is the MVP, will be able to import the data from the voting portal. So every community member's AGIX holding, for example, and some different metrics, and then integrate that data into this final score as well.
Now, when it shows that people commented as anonymous, but you actually get the actual person, right? You can actually aggregate the entirety of the interaction.
Yeah, so every community member on SWAE right now can either sign in with their wallet or create a username. So everyone's represented somehow with a user ID. So I believe most people sign in with their wallet. So even if they're anonymous publicly, I believe that it maps to a user wallet address, user wallet address, yeah. And eventually there's a wallet linking tool as well that will spit out like a universal ID, and that will combine the voting portal data with the SWAE data under like for every wallet address.
Cool. At some point, Jan dropped something I didn't. He said that they're considering moving away from SWAE platform. That's kind of.
Yeah. So a part of this MVP or a part of this next proposal that we're putting in for the RFP will be to kind of examine if they were to move into their own WordPress, how that would look like and how that would fit into the tool as well. But thankfully, we've designed the database architecture to kind of be scalable in a sense that it would be able to import data from different references and it will still work. So we're hoping that it would be seamless, but we'll know that through the discovery phase.
Right. Yeah, it seems like so much effort went into SWAE that to even replicate key features of that would be quite a bit of effort, but I guess maybe they found a ready-made solution. I'm just kind of curious about that definitive direction.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll hear more from Jan once they make a decision on that. I think SWAE is a solution that can be used by multiple projects, so it's not customizable for deep funding. Maybe there's certain aspects that deep funding needs that SWAE can't deliver at the moment. So that could be the intention behind going through their own WordPress solution. But I'm sure we'll hear more about that soon.
Like they want to get into development of WordPress plugins, really?
I wish I can tell
they're doing that. They're SingularityNET is in the middle of developing their own website for it, and it wasn't ready for round 3, but they are trying to get it ready for round 4.
Okay, a curious choice. It seems like there are commercial solutions, but if they feel like development, oh well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Henrik, if you ever want to talk about, a lot of this ground, having spent a year at Gitcoin, specifically in their anti-Sybil department, I kind of know some of the patterns that multiple whatever accounts, either manual or bot created, tend to exhibit. In other words, if you ever want to throw some.
We do want to do that. In fact, I had sent you a meeting invitation, I think 2 weeks ago now, but there must have been some miscommunication because you didn't seem to get it. And
correct,
then that passed.
Correct.
And then we were under pressure with the proposal deadlines.
Oh yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah.
But Juana and I still want to talk to you.
Sure, yeah.
Give us a week or two as we kind of settle through this.
Don't worry, let's see how the whole mechanics and the Discord server act. It's like, weird. What weird timing, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to offer when you talk about aggregating a single metric, may I offer that you allow some flexibility there, or even, expose that for tuning. Having spent some time with the analysis with SourceCred of various inputs, again, gaming the system is a real question. And again, like, there are lessons to be, obtained from that, but also just simple retuning of how much weight you give to, let's say how many messages versus, well, I don't know which ones are replies, the length of the messages, all that kind of, at the minimum, you can do a little bit of adjusting along the way. So again, whoever is gonna do the next round of development, maybe we can do it modular enough, knowing that we may want to experiment in those areas, just make them more naturally extensible, kind of isolate that logic.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And that's definitely, I think the end goal is to make it as configurable as possible and to open it up to other projects within SingularityNET. So they can import data from all the different sources that are relevant to their reputation score, let's call it. And then they'd be able to configure that score however they see fit for their use case. Beyond that as well, like, I don't know, this tool can go.
Well, I'm sorry, folks. This is a continued conversation between Henrik and I. So I am very, very sorry that I've dumped all this kind of technical minutia on you.
No worries. No, that's great.
No worries.
We like to use rounds in our discussions, though. So Mario or Esther, maybe you can contribute, even if it's just kind of your perspective or thoughts on choices about how communities are doing voting and the merits of having reputation or engagement as part of that voting process.
Hi. Yes, it took me a while to join the session because I had family dinner time that was already pushed later and later by the initial kind of deep funding joining. So I apologize for coming late to the table. I really appreciate that you've put the community engagement or contributions tool in the pool, because we really need it, and we need something that is really flexible, because I think the more you put into the tool, the more helpful it's going to be, and the more open it is to different data sources, the more helpful that's going to be. I think there's a possible join up here with knowledge graphs potentially as a possible kind of combination. And I'm generally a very big fan of domain-specific reputation as well. So not just kind of flat, but also if there are different teams that need their own individual reputation score that isn't laterally transferable, I think that that's really helpful as well. For example, maybe the ambassadors don't necessarily want everybody being able to make decisions about the ambassador program, for example, or having the same kind of reputation that they accumulate there being applicable. So maybe a kind of nested reputation system can be really helpful, or this sort of thing. Those are my initial kind of thoughts without much prepping. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens on the reputation front over the coming months. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Esther. I mean, this is really great feedback, because just coming at it from a technical perspective, it's really good to know that at least we're going in the right direction of making it very modular. So yeah, no, this is really good. Thank you.
Is someone already working on that knowledge graph, or has some documented ideas at least how to start? Or is
well, there's an RFP
ideation?
Actually. Yeah, there's an RFP pool for it, or pool, I guess.
So my understanding is that the knowledge graphs are a big initiative within SingularityNET, and then through the RFPs, there's an invitation for the community to begin participating in that. So we are putting also a proposal into the, I think it's RFP 4, tools for knowledge graphs and language models.
I've submitted one in RFP2.
Okay, great.
Which kind of gets close to the semantic analysis and that direction. So because I think you have to come from different sites in order to,
Yeah, and actually one thing we shifted, we kept a research component in our proposal that was initially going to be about advancing the quadratic voting process, because we're actually using a fairly simple version of that. There are more advanced versions of it. However, given the emphasis on knowledge graphs and its
Oh, we lost your.
relationship with engagement scores, we put in a research collaborate with teams that are developing knowledge graphs.
Can you repeat your last sentence, because you were cut, at least for me.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
Okay. So there is a research component to our proposal on engagement scores to collaborate with the teams that are working on knowledge graphs. So like if your team is awarded to work on knowledge graphs, we feel that that could contribute to reputation, then we'd love to work with you collaboratively on the two projects.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that would totally make sense, for sure.
And I think that's being encouraged for teams to find ways to collaborate, you know, not to have more of a competitive kind of spirit. You know, quadratic thing sounds good on paper, but again, Gitcoin, having worked on it for years, it has serious issues in the real world, and not just Sybil. I'll tell you, they made the tool, a Web3 native tool, to compete with Coordinate, and a user had the choice of whether to aggregate scores, you know, straight or quadratic, and, you know, nobody used quadratic. It was pretty much straight scores was the choice in that particular application.
There's also the option of having the exponent be something between 1/2 and 1 that maybe needs to be explored a little bit more. It doesn't have to be a binary choice between quadratic and one corner.
Right. Yeah, the theoretical derivation of quadratic as having some great properties, I think, makes some very sort of specific assumptions. Also, the feelings are against people with large token positions, I think, is somewhat misguided, because you have founders with large positions, you have initial investors. All of those very much have long-term focus, you know, progress of the, you know, of the promising initiatives. So this feeling against small investors who just have no idea and just looking for a quick win is not actually, you know, doesn't span the entire range of the.
I actually think a separate project specifically on improving the voting process would have a lot of merits, because as you're saying, the original proposals around quadratic voting weren't actually about weighting wallets. It was actually about improving democratic processes. So the starting point was actually how to improve upon one person, one vote. And it was opening up the possibility that people could buy a vote directly, which is kind of economic. But then it had mechanisms to control against domination. And those were twofold. One was that the stronger your opinion on a particular issue, you know, you would have to pay quadratically for your votes. But the second part of the process that very few communities have really explored is that you would actually make a payment into a public treasury. And then at the end of the voting, that public treasury would be distributed evenly to all the participants in the voting. And that second mechanism is actually important, that you're actually, if you want to express a very strong opinion, you have to kind of pay into a public treasury to do that. On the other hand, if you keep your opinions modest, you actually get a payment out as a kind of payment for contributing to the public opinion.
Yeah, so that was the theoretical study of, you know, like with conviction voting and all that kind of stuff. It's interesting stuff, but after all is said and done, we're only familiar with one person, and, you know, we fought wars and revolutions over that one. or in a commercial environment, one share, one vote, and introducing something that's like hard to comprehend or validate, I think is a bad idea. It's like voting is confusing enough as it is.
Mhm. You are aware that SingularityNet is using quadratic voting, like we're already doing it.
I'd like to believe though that it combats a lot by integrating it with like into a larger score that has things like engagement and other metrics. So it's not just about your holdings. I think that's like a good approach that SingularityNet is utilizing to safeguard like from all these different possible problems, but so we have decentralized identities and stuff as well. It's still going to be like, I think the point of failure here is the fact that it's your wallet address. Even if it's multiple wallet addresses linked with a single user ID, I think there's still room for improvement there. But I think that like unique combination of like a grander reputation score with your holding is a good approach.
Can I ask something? That was my next question, really. Rather than using AGIX as the primary voting mechanism, what do you think of the idea of creating a single governance token? So basically one person, one vote, but that is supported by a zero knowledge proof digital identity. So only the reputation score plus the token that is supported by the individual identity that doesn't have to be known. It just has to be known that it's the right person.
Right.
And there has to be some kind of system that verifies the fact that there isn't the same person doing another one. Is that feasible?
Feasible in the sense of like developing it within this tool or just in general?
Well, both.
I think yes, within this tool for sure. I think in general, I really like that approach. But something, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, this is just my opinion. Something about still utilizing holding power is pretty beneficial. It does show some skin in the game. And then you can use it.
It doesn't have to be the token itself, though. You could have that information feed into the system without it actually being the token that you use to vote, though, right?
Right.
You could still have like the wallet behavior data that feeds into the reputation system that bolsters the governance token.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I like that approach a lot, actually.
Actually, do you want to talk about the token proposal that you wrote, Joanna?
Yeah, we do have another proposal actually, but so it's around possibly launching a deep funding token. We don't know if it's going to be a token or what it's still going to be. We're still going to explore that, but it's kind of in the sense portraying on-chain those engagement scores or those scores that are being calculated. So this proposal is very short. It's in the ideation pool. We're just going to put together some workshops to kind of explore that potential and what that could look like. And if, representing it as a token is the right approach, or a verifiable credential or whatever have you. But the concept is right now those scores that are being configured and calculated, they're not stored on chain, they're not utilized in any way. So how can we better depict them on chain, or what are the other ways we can utilize them, possibly different communities as well? So this could tie in very well to what you're mentioning, Esther. So if we do win, please join these workshops.
Definitely. I saw the proposal and I was really excited about it, because I think it's some thinking that really ties into what we're trying to do with the new community DAO and the blueprint that's going to be produced and things like that. So I think that kind of exploration and experimentation will be really helpful. So definitely also keep in touch with the people who are working on SingCom DAO, because we're going to do something like that as well.
Okay, I'm going to write that down because I keep forgetting their name. What is it again? SingCom DAO?
I think Singularity Community DAO is probably the best way to remember it, or SC DAO.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
I hate the name personally. I would prefer if we
Can we rebrand that? It's just like the very fact that you had to name it two different ways, I think shows it's memorable.
I hope we will change it as soon as possible. Maybe it could be like the first thing that the community votes on is like the name of the DAO.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Singularity DAO is taken and it's really confusing.
Right.
Right.
And what I'm hoping from these workshops as well is like, maybe we can come up with some sort of framework, because this is specifically for deep funding, but in essence, it could be for any other decentralized community or project within SingularityNET that could benefit from having this representation on chain. So even if the output is some sort of framework of what works, either like a token or a governance token or a verifiable credential or whatever, and we can come up with something that could benefit the entire ecosystem, I think that would be very cool.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Esther,
So I
do
think
you see-
go
do
ahead.
you see any opportunity within your now heading the, and congratulations, heading the decentralization effort to bring some rigor to this voting, basically do some real modeling of it, or I guess let us know if and when.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand really the question.
Since you're mapping out how to decentralize, voting mechanics is going to be one of the topics, so we could throw some rigor into modeling those voting mechanisms.
Yes, well, I think as we develop the blueprint, I think it will be essential to have some expertise on the task force who know how to do this kind of thing, who are experienced in tokenomics. So I think it would be really helpful, especially if you know anybody or are a person who has that kind of expertise, then definitely apply to the task force or suggest somebody to be contacted, or contact them yourself for the task force. I agree, there's a lot of random experimentation that is generally not very successful across the DAO space.
Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, or are there any other questions? Maybe that's the better question.
So, of course, I'm going to comment in a positive and so on. Any other ways you can think of that, since just about all of us like this idea, how we can help promote it?
Promote, you mean our proposals, or?
Yep, the proposal. Would like it very much to see the work continue. See, this is one thing that I think is very special. This is an ongoing effort. There is the working code already in GitHub. I mean, a lot of other stuff is just like futures or concepts and promises. This is already mapped out, and there is already in place proof of, delivering, which is no small thing.
Yeah, no, I'm honestly very happy and proud of the team for actually achieving all our milestones. Thanks to also the Deep Funding team. Everyone's been super helpful, and the community as well. We've gotten great feedback from some of the breakout rooms. So it's been a very exciting journey, and I'm looking forward to the continuation of this project, regardless of how it happens. But yeah, if you like it.
And I'll say too, like, I'll just thank you, Walter. We appreciate that, and we appreciate having the community's support. And Bill Thistleton and I have worked together for a couple of decades on projects, and Bill led the first phase of this, and Juana was part of the team. But she did really fantastic work on defining what the minimum viable product would be and what the vision for the roadmap would be is. So she's going to be the principal investigator on phase 2, and she'll be the one leading the project. And we're excited to work with the community. We'll continue doing it as open source development. And we're, interested in, collaborating with Dominic and other teams that get funded on related projects that can integrate into this.
Yes, and Bill is, Walter probably we'll be able to consult if needed for sure.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, I honestly have to drop off. I'm sorry, but this is really nice. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really happy to have met everyone. Esther, especially, I'm happy to have met you. Felix told me so much about you. So thank you for joining, and I hope we can catch up soon as well.
It's great to meet you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Guys. Have a great
Thank
evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Sierra.
Take care.
Bye.